Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're stepping into the tech and design space, you've probably felt totally overwhelmed by this absolute avalanche of industry jargon at some point, right? Well, today we're cutting through all that noise. We're going to finally make the differences between UX, UI, and product design crystal clear. Now, I want to immediately anchor you with this foundational idea. UX decides what gets built, UI decides how it looks, and product design, well, that decides if it should be built at all. Seriously, keep this in the back of your mind. It's literally the ultimate blueprint for everything we're about to unpack today. Okay, here's our roadmap. 1. The industry confusion. 2. The restaurant analogy. 3. Defining the roles. 4. One feature, 3 viewpoints. 5. Myths and realities. And finally, 6. Where to start. So relax, trust the structure, and let's master these 3 pillars together. Section 1. The industry confusion. If you've been banging your head against the wall trying to understand these terms, believe me, your frustration is completely valid. The confusion you're feeling, it's not a knowledge gap on your part. It's actually a massive inconsistency problem within the industry itself. Job titles, frankly, they lie. A company hiring a UI/UX designer usually just wants one person to do the work of 3. Then online courses blur the lines, teaching you a software tool like Figma and claiming they're teaching you UX. Plus, small companies merge roles. In a tiny 15-person startup, you're doing everything. But in a massive tech giant, those are 3 entirely separate teams. Section 2. The restaurant analogy. Let's build a clear mental model. Before we throw out any more digital jargon, imagine opening a restaurant. UX, or user experience, is basically the floor plan and the flow. It's the mechanics. How does a customer find a table, order, and get their food? Is the kitchen close enough so the food actually arrives hot? Look, if your customers wait 40 minutes for a table and walk out hungry, that is a massive UX failure, no matter how nice the place looks. Now contrast that with UI, or user interface. This is exactly what the customer physically sees and touches. We're talking the menu typography, that trendy Edison bulb lighting, the heavy ceramic plates. It's the literal surface where the customer meets the restaurant. So if UX is the skeleton and the floor plan, UI is the skin and the interior design. And then we have product design. Think of this as the restaurant owner's job. The product designer asks the really critical, foundational questions. Should this be a biryani place or a cafe? Who is the target customer? Is there even demand for another restaurant on this street? The owner oversees the UX floor plan and the UI menu design because ultimately, all of those elements have to serve the underlying business. This perfectly highlights why you need all these elements working together. Great UX plus bad UI, it's like a highly efficient restaurant that looks so cheap nobody trusts the food. On the flip side, bad UX plus great UI is this stunningly beautiful, Instagram-worthy restaurant where literally nobody can find the toilet. And, of course, bad product decisions mean you've got a perfectly optimized, beautiful restaurant that nobody in that neighborhood actually wanted in the first place. Section 3. Defining the roles. Let's take that physical analogy and map it straight onto a digital app. Let's start with the UX mindset. If the user has to think, something is broken. A UX designer figures out what the user is trying to do and what's stopping them, way before any visual design happens. Say 30% of users on a food delivery app abandon their cart at the address screen. A UX designer interviews users and might discover, hey, people absolutely hate retyping their office address every single day. So the fix? Drawing out wireframes for a saved addresses feature. Notice how absolutely 0 colors or fonts were involved in solving that massive problem. Next up is the UI mindset, which is all about every single pixel should communicate something. The UI designer takes that structural UX skeleton and makes it attractive and usable at the pixel level. With our saved address feature, they're the ones who decide how those address cards actually look. Which icon marks home versus work? Is the color contrast readable? How do these buttons behave on a tiny phone screen? Finally, the product mindset. Design only succeeds if both the business and the user win. A product designer adds a strategic layer on top of all this. In our food app, they'll ask if that saved address feature is actually the right investment for this quarter. They might dig into the data and find that a broken payment retry flow is costing the company way more revenue. So they push the address feature to next quarter and fix payments instead. That one strategic decision, worth way more than any perfectly designed screen. When we put these side by side, the distinctions get really sharp. UX asks, does it work? Focusing on flow. UI asks, does it look right? Focusing on visuals.
Product asks, should we build this? Focusing on strategy. They all use distinct tools and have totally different criteria for success and failure.
Section 4. One feature, 3 viewpoints. Let's see what happens when leadership says, hey, add a split the bill feature to our payments app. The UX viewpoint immediately jumps to human behavior. They'll ask, how do people actually split bills in the real world today? Do they split them evenly or item by item? Who initiates it? Their job right now is mapping out that real human behavior and drawing the initial wireframes. The UI viewpoint takes a totally different angle, focusing purely on visual representation. They ask, how on earth do we neatly fit 4 different people, their avatars, and varying dollar amounts onto one tiny screen? What does a pending status look like versus a paid status? And the product viewpoint? They zone right in on the business value. Before anyone even touches a wireframe, they're asking, does a split the bill feature actually increase app usage? What gets dropped from our engineering roadmap to pay for this? It's the exact same feature, viewed through 3 completely distinct lenses. Section 5, Myths and Realities. Let's arm you with some insider knowledge and debunk a few pervasive myths. Let's rapid fire through these. UX means no visual design. False. They use Figma constantly, just earlier in the process. UI is just decoration. False. Contrast and hierarchy literally dictate usability. Product design is a promotion. False. It's a wider scope, not a higher rank. And my absolute favorite, Figma equals UX. No way. Figma is just a software tool. Learning Figma without understanding users is exactly like buying a fancy camera and instantly calling yourself a filmmaker. Section 6. Where to start. Now that you know all this, here is your concrete, actionable roadmap. You've got to approach this in a highly specific sequence. Step 1, UI. It gives you fast visual feedback and lets you build a portfolio quickly to stay motivated. Step 2, UX. Once you can build a nice screen, you need to learn why it should exist in the first place. That's the difference between a designer and a decorator. Step 3, product. You tackle this last because it truly requires real-world constraints and actual business metrics to grasp. For your very first job, memorize this exact formula. Aim to be strong in UI, competent in UX, and highly curious about product. That specific blend of skills, that is exactly what gets you hired and through the door in today's market. And I'll leave you with this provocative reality. The smaller the company you join, the wider your job will be. You'll end up juggling UX, UI, and product all at once. But the bigger the company, the deeper your job goes, allowing you to hyper-specialize. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to be the architect, the interior decorator, or the owner? Or maybe, do you have what it takes to be all 3? Decide your path, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.